Thanks for listening to Wine for Normal People, the podcast for people who like wine, but not the snobbery that goes with it. I'm Elizabeth Schneider, a certified sommelier and certified specialist of wine.
And I'm MC Ice, just a wine-loving normal person.
Before we get started on this fantastic podcast, which is with Lorenzo Muslija, who is from Andis Wines in Amador County. So many of you have asked me to cover Amador. We will be doing a separate podcast on Amador just to get the facts down. But Lorenzo is also fascinating because he's Albanian and Italian, and he gives us a great perspective on what it's like to be from another country and to come to a new, fresh wine region. He also has had an illustrious career as a restaurateur, so he's quite modest, but just know that before we get started. And I love this podcast. I hope that you love Wine for Normal People and that you will support us on Patreon, which is our private community. We use the public radio model. You guys give us a little bit of money a month, and we give you extra tips, conversations, some goodies. And in return, we can continue to produce the podcast. Without you, we cannot do it. patreon.com/wine for normal people. Patreon.com/wine for normal people. Let's get to the podcast. Today, we have who has been termed by some people who have met him the smoothest man in wine, Lorenzo Muslija, who is the national sales manager of Andis Wines, which is in Amador County. I know so many of you have been like, when are you doing a podcast on Amador? Well, this will be the first, and then we'll try to do an overview podcast. We haven't really had a chance, but I've got to come out and see you, Lorenzo. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for inviting me, not only here on this podcast, but as well for inviting me to your amazing event that we did in DC. So I think that broke the ice to meet in person. So
yes, it was awesome to meet you.
I'm so excited about this show and to talk about our small little big region. So
yes, that, and you are a very fascinating figure in wine. You have so much going on. I really want to talk about you for a while. Is that okay?
Oh, thank you. I would love to share what I know and what I am.
Well, let's do that. Okay, so Lorenzo is both Albanian and Italian. Now, most of your, especially later life, was spent in Italy. But what do you think you got from being sort of cross-cultural in two different places? Where did you grow up in Italy? And can you talk a little bit about Albania, which I don't think has a giant wine culture, right?
Well, yeah. Being across culture, I like to compare myself as being a good Bordeaux. Like, you put two great grapes together that might not perform alone, but when you combine them together, it performs like as a strong one. So yeah, the Italian part of me, it's just the Occident culture. You're exposed to so many great things. But the Albanian part, it's you build a strong person on you because nothing was easy and nothing was given to you. So yeah, I think the Albanian part is like the bones, and then the build a stronger man like I am today, or I think I am. If I ask to my wife, I don't think she will say the same thing. But
well, what part of Italy did you grow up in?
In Florence. Yeah,
okay. So you were in the most beautiful city in all of Italy. But your family is from southern Italy, so you guys made the trip up to Florence. And what was that like, actually? Because it's interesting. So Albania had a lot of turmoil, especially around the time that you were growing up, but you still went back and things were getting better, and they finally got a lot better, and you wound up going to high school there, right?
Albania is part of it's like a lot of political issues, and once everything went all right in the 90s, I decided to go and do my school. I did my high school, Jesuit, to private high school, just so I can learn the language, and as well I wanted to learn the culture. And just to respond to your question back about Albania and wine, the wine in Albania date back to the same dates that the Romans were, because Albania was part of the Roman Empire for a long time. And after that, a Byzantine Empire. So it was a cross path between India and West Europe. So wine was always crossed through that region. And a lot of varieties are there. Like they found a lot of the wine dates back, like I believe, 2nd or 3rd century. But it was never a big industry, especially after the Ottoman Empire, the religion thing, and then the wine kind of disappeared. But now it's coming back again.
It's a lot like Greece, frankly, and it's right near Greece. So if you don't know where Albania is, it is on the Adriatic, and it is near Greece, but it's also near sort of the heel of the boot of Italy. So it's kind of right across, right? It can't be a very long trip across that.
45 minutes on the boat, or 45 minutes flying. Like now that everyone knows where Croatia and Dubrovnik is,
Yes.
because the country is like 40 minutes south of Croatia, and on the border north of Greece, and right on the backside of the heel of Italy. So it's on the ocean, it's on the Adriatic. So it's a beautiful country, actually. Right now it's becoming a destination.
It should be. It looks beautiful. So you went to Milan and this is a little bit Florence to Milan. Florentines hate Milan, but you went there for civil engineering. So what kind of civil engineering did you do? Because you could do environmental, you can do bridges, you can do roads, you can do there's so much. Civil engineering is such an old and multifaceted thing. Did it link to wine?
When I finished high school, I wanted to an inspector, a private detective, or a cop would be here, but not like just not the cop that I wanted to work for embassy. So, and I begged my mom. I said, like, please, I want to do that. And then she did not let me do that. And then I wanted to be a farmer as well. And she's like, no way. We spent all this money on private school and education. And then she had already put a list, like was doctor, engineer, architect, the prestige schools titles. Growing up, I always had this science part on me, and math was my thing, physics, and I did not want it to be a doctor because it was like it's a forever school, get in, so you never end up finishing studying. So I picked civil engineer because I wanted to build things, and I wanted to build big things, not just a house. I wanted to create, stadiums and hospitals and all this other magnificent buildings that Italy has. So I went to Politecnico di Milano, which is one of the oldest universities of Italy, together with the one in Bologna. And as you said, was not easy either there, because like one thing that Italy has that make you feel an immigrant even in your own country. Because it's
completely. It's like the old kingdoms are still around. I mean, if you go to Rome from Florence, everybody's like, oh, Florence.
Oh, Medici against Sforza, But I love Milan. I mean, I think it was the best time of my life, because beside the fact you're in college, but it's in Europe, it's a different college. It's not like here in the States. I was exposed to wine from an aristocratic point of wine, not just a drinking party, but I like being an engineer, but at the same time, I felt that I'm obligated to do this because of my mom and my parents wanted to be so. So I studied extremely hard, and I wanted to finish as fast as I can, and I just wanted to get out of that and go back and do what I liked, which was first traveling, and that's how I got to be exposed more and more on wine. Well,
I was going to ask that also, because all of the things that we're talking about regarding Italy, because I think as Americans or as people, as British or Canadians and Australians, those are the main people that listen to the show, we tend to think, okay, well, we have a lot of access to international everything. We don't necessarily only drink wines from our own country, but it's even more specific in Italy, which is that they don't even know, France is like this too, they don't even know what anybody's making anywhere else. They only know that this is the local wine and that's what they're drinking. And it may even be more specific in the sense that it may be like my brother's cousin's father makes that wine, and that's the only wine that we drink. We just go to the vineyard at the end of the harvest, we get a bunch, and that's what we drink. And so it's interesting to me that you were able to, and I wonder again if this goes back to the fact that you did have family that was from Albania, that you did travel. By the way, you could just stay in Florence. I mean, you could stay in Tuscany and you would never have to leave that wine culture and still have so much to know. But I find it really interesting that you were interested in other places. So how did that go?
Italy, as you know very well, I mean, the winemaking and being in the wine life in Italy is owned by generations of generations. So you're either part of the family, or you marry into a family, or you got lucky to fell into a family that is involved in the wine industry. So for me, being a little bit like the odd, I wanted to discover other things and to discover other places. So, but yes, I mean, if I stood in Italy and Florence today, I would be extremely happy working for, I don't know, for famous winery or not, but it has to do a lot the way I grew up, you know. And you're correct that the fact of being from a different country and from being with different culture in it makes you push towards different directions, and as well, the grass is greener on the other side of the neighbor. So I always wanted to see if it was that greener, you know. And
how did you move from civil engineering into working in restaurants? And what did your parents say now that you've told me about this?
Oh, yeah, I think my mom still has. If I mentioned that, she probably might drop a few heartbeats down and go in. But I did just about 6 months that involved a little bit of engineering. So I was just correcting exams for future students. So, and it was the most boring thing that I ever done in my life. I look back and I see it was pretty expensive to go to the college there, but as well to live the Milan lifestyle.
Oh, it's so expensive.
It's like living in San Francisco and not working for Google. So that's why, for me, I wanted to make as quick money as I can, so I will be able to do what I always wanted to do. And so I started in the restaurant industry, and it was fascinating at the same time because I got exposed to food and wine and food pairing and wine pairing, and I was extremely lucky because I was like this young guy that knows so little about wine and about food, and I got to meet like Michelin star restaurants and chefs, and one of the great chefs from Italy, where they were so happy to share their knowledge with a young guy that had a million questions. And the only beneficial that I got from engineering, what I would say, it's that I had a systematic mindset. I knew that the only way to achieve something was like by learning and by asking. Mm-hmm. And like that's how I even today I use a lot of part of my being engineer. It's a science, and then science doesn't leave room for experimentation. You know, it's a defect. So 1 + 1 is 2. And for me, and I applied that as well to my learning for wine. That if I don't ask, no one is going to tell me, and if I don't learn, I'm never going to find out. So, restaurant industry for me was fantastic. I mean, I loved it. I got to eat and drink on the best Italian restaurants until I decided to open my own, and that was a different story, because...
So where did you work? I know people right now are saying, like, what are the best Italian restaurants? Where should we go if we're going to go to the best Italian restaurants? So in Florence specifically?
Florence, I mean, I can drop some names, but I always like to tell people that wherever is a Duomo or a building that are a million tourists taking pictures... Run away from that. Just take that path that maybe it looks dark at the end of the street or you don't see when it turns. And then if you find someone it's cooking or it's a restaurant that has a sign that says a restaurant, I would take that challenge and knock in there, because I guarantee you will have one of the most amazing food that you can, instead of finding it at the fancy restaurant.
All the best restaurants on the Oltre Arno then, on the other side of the Arno?
I would say that the best Italian restaurants that tailor Italian clients, I think they are in the Oltre Arno and as well on the suburbs part of Florence, pretty much all around the Florence city. But said so, there are a few great restaurants. I mean, we have a 3 Michelin star, which is called Enoteca Pinchiori, which doesn't matter who you are or how much money you make. If you don't have a reservation, they don't even let you park the car in front.
All right, wait, so give us at least a couple other restaurants that you like. They don't have to be fancy, but I think people travel so often to Florence that we want some insider dirt.
I think the best restaurant ever, it's in Oltre Arno. It's called Enoteca Pitti Gola e Cantina. But if you Google it, Enoteca Pitti, it will come up the rest of the words.
Is it near the Pitti Palace?
Yes, it's
Okay.
it's on this almost in front of Pitti Palace. Even that is in front of a very famous building, which is defeat what I said before. But the owner of that restaurant, they maintain a very high standard for themselves. So it's a phenomenal restaurant.
Great.
The other one that I really like a lot is Gustavino, which is a street eatery. They preserve the authenticity of Italian cuisine.
Is that also on the Alto Arno?
Gustavino, it's it's not on the other side of the Arno. It's in this side, but it's near the Arno.
So many great restaurants, like near Santa Croce up there, or
yes,
the other side. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm only mentioning this because if you happen to be going to Italy and you might not have any idea what we're talking about. However, if you start researching it, you will see all of these names. You will easily find the Pitti Palace. You'll easily find Santa Croce, which is why I'm forcing you to tell us this, Lorenzo. I'm sorry.
Oh, I will. You know what I will do? I will send you. I'll send you a list at the end. So if you can share it with your contacts,
Awesome.
I'll send you places where you don't feel like a tourist, where you feel like you belong to the community and to the. Because that's the number one question people ask me always, like, oh, where we here at the winery? Oh, where we should go? What we should do? So,
can we talk about your restaurant in Florence? So this is, I have to say, this is a bit of a bold move. Florence is an insider society. And when you set up a restaurant there, I would assume that it's got to be some sort of, are you doing this for tourists? Are you going to have people coming from the community? And I know you did really well, but how did you do this?
The name of the restaurant, by the way, was called Brown Sugar Lounge Bar. So the most anti-Italian word that you can find all put together. I mean,
why did you do that?
I was different, and I wanted to do different things. I don't want it to make another Italian restaurant that sells the pizza and the pasta and the pasta and the pizza, for as amazing that might have been. And I just wanted something different. And I got lucky that I met the private chef of Roberto Cavalli. So Roberto Cavalli is like a famous shoe designer. I mean, It's like the Versace and the Pucci and other great designers. So, and we had this sponsor that was the Cavalli's neighbor. So, I mean, extremely rich Florentine guy. He had as well this other vision. He said, like, let's create something that is a little bit different. And we say in Italy, and this might sound offensive to the Italians, but the best Italian restaurants, they sell French food. So I wanted to create like that modern Italian and as well a French twist into it. But all our products were sourced locally. I mean, every food that we served in our restaurant was from local farmers. So I created, a pseudo French restaurant, but very modern, and like an open kitchen where you were invited at a certain hour, and everything was supposed to be served at the same time. And we made it I believe, at number 2 on the TripAdvisor of like 1,000 restaurants.
I've said this before on the show. In Europe, TripAdvisor is really accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in the U.S. there's some question about that, but they really do. People really do feel like they give back to the community. So I think it's pretty accurate. That's pretty awesome that you made it to 2. That's huge.
Oh yeah, it was. And yes, I mean TripAdvisor. If we can give a tip to the travelers, that if you travel in Europe, don't look at Yelp, because it's not. No. It does not work that way. TripAdvisor that tells you exactly, and it's more accurate to the reality of what happened there.
It's like the Cellar Tracker. The most accurate wine notes come from Cellar Tracker. Certainly not from critics. No offense, usually not from the winery either. The best and most honest ones are on Cellar Tracker, because these are the people that really, really are into wine. TripAdvisor sort of is the same thing. The only people that are contributing to those reviews are people who are fairly well traveled and they are giving back to the community. So it's one of those communities that works really well. And so if you don't know wineries to go to, or you don't know, and just to throw this out there, we did a podcast with Ian Rennick maybe 2 years ago about traveling in France. We said the same thing. If you want to find wineries that will accept tourists and you happen to be in Burgundy, go on TripAdvisor, because that's what's going to have what you want. So you hit number 2. You have this crazy, awesome concept. Were Florentines coming or was it tourists? How did it spread out?
It was 50-50. It was, we had a lot of what back on the time would be called millennial. I mean, a younger generation that they wanted to try something different. We had a lot of young couples. We did not have that old clientele that look into the restaurant theme as a going out and eating and those big family dinners where the grandpa invites all the grandkids and the kids. So we were more like, it was more like a couple thing. You know, you go there, and you had an experience. So we had a lot of younger generation. But as we start rising on TripAdvisor, we noticed that people from other countries that were traveling Florence, which is one of the most touristy places in the world. So for as much as you want to not be only a tourist thing, but it's impossible to avoid.
Oh, yeah.
People, when they booked the restaurant, we did not take preference. I mean, who first come, first serve. We did not say, oh, your name it's Lorenzo and you get the table. And if your name was Larry, you don't get the table.
Well, you're a business, so of course you're going to take.
Exactly.
You've got to pay attention to the green, right? The money.
Oh, yeah. Especially in the restaurant industry. I mean, it's an industry of coins. You know, every coin matters. So.
Yes.
But a restaurant industry was not what I wanted to be when you start to have a very popular restaurant and a very famous restaurant, because it sucks you in. Instead of like a way out there, you just like are more and more and more and more times.
Why is that?
I think perfection, that's the only way to achieve it is if you do it by yourself. At least I think. I mean, there are other people that are great business people and give a direction and they achieve greater goals in their life. But I wanted to, I'm that way, and still today, I want to do things by myself, and maybe as well as like proud. I'm proud of what I do, and I'm proud what I leave behind. Spending a lot of time inside the restaurant and being freshly married. I married in 2010, and the restaurant was open in 2012, so it was not So, you know, I had this vision of being a father since I was a young guy. I always wanted to raise up a family, and those are two things that you cannot do it when you have a small restaurant. You have to choose one or the other, and that's what I did, to be honest. I mean, my daughter was born September 5th, 2013, and I was out of the restaurant, I believe, the next day. So
oh my gosh,
this is it. I mean, it's just
So what did you do? Did you sell your share, or did you just?
I give my part away, and I got what would belong to me, and then and the restaurant was absorbed by a luxurious suite company that owned suites in Florence, and now the restaurant does not serve anymore the same concept. It's just like a breakfast, a place where people go and
have brioche.
Sleep. Yeah, have brioche. Yeah. But I was happy about that because I don't want it to see my concept shine in someone else's hands. So to be honest.
I totally get that. So why did you move out of the best place in the entire world to California? No offense to Californians. I really like California, but Italy is kind of paradise. Is it economics, or there's a lot of great wine programs in Italy? I mean, why Sonoma State, and how did that come about? What was the idea to come to California?
So my wife is Californian.
Okay.
That's right. But that was not the reason, because when she's going to hear this podcast, she's going to be the first one commenting that's not true. She was not the one that wanted to come to California. She wanted to stay in Italy and live there, and then she always dreamed about raising our daughter in Florence. But you know, economy was one part of it. Second, as well, was what I said before. The wine industry in Europe does not leave that much room for experimentation. I mean, it's like the 10 commands. They're written, and then no one can change those 10 commands. So it's everything by the book and everything. So, and for me, that I always had something different in mind, and I wanted to try different things. And whereas that other place, it's either Australia, which I'm in love. My daughter's name is Adelaide, so it tells a lot. I love Australia. Or California. So, and California was the easy way because of relatives that we had here, the housing and the hospitality that my in-laws has been a huge, huge help. I would not even be halfway on my career that I am now if it wasn't for them and the help that they give to me and my family and my wife.
You travel quite a bit. We'll get to what you do in a second, but So did you want to learn winemaking? I would think that for you, a guy who's pretty good at science, there might be some appeal to that.
It was the appeal, and that's why I wanted, everyone was telling me go to UC Davis. And I sent my application via email, not an application, a request to meet with one of their recruiters. But, I'm like, I have a daughter now. I am way ahead on my learning, and I sit down and I found out how much I had to pay.
It's ridiculous, right?
And I just said, like, if it's someone that has to get those money, will be my kids. I was feeling guilty to spend all those money in just learning something that I knew the science is science, as we said. It doesn't change that much. But I wanted to learn something different that a lot of European do not do often, or a lot of winemakers or wine people do not do often, the business part of it. I mean, how to hold a sustainable business, and because at the end, I mean, wine, yes, it's all this romantic talk, but at the end, we have to sell it so we can buy that bottle again. I went to Sonoma, and I picked Sonoma because of their programming, and then they were partnering right away, I think that year or a year before, with Silicon Valley Bank, that is a data collector. So I saw an opportunity on that side. But the Sonoma does not only leave blank the winemaking. I learned everything, A to Z there, but I focus more on the business part of that.
I think that in our certification, school obsessed, and I'm not poo-pooing school. I've been to lots of school, and you've been to lots of school, and it's great. But we do forget sometimes that you could teach yourself how to make wine, and you could be really, really good at it, and you don't need a degree to do that. Whereas perhaps some of the structural elements of the wine business, which are pretty complex, especially in the United States, but are very complex, and the idea of having a sustainable business in wine is not something that most people who go into the wine industry understand. Even the people that go to UC Davis and study and are the best winemakers in the world, there is something to be said for that, because you could go and learn how to make wine because people have been doing it for 8,000 years, and Lord knows there were no schools back then to teach them.
I could not agree more with you, because, yes, you said you can learn to make wine even online or by just looking or by going and working. But the business part, that's the tough part of it. And that's how I decided to do it. I said, you know what? I'm going to learn this part, which is hard. And if I leave it for later, my brain will not absorb the same amount of information that you do it when you're a little bit younger. And then the winemaking knowledge will come as working. And that's how it's been working for me. Because of the partnership that I do with great winemakers here at the winery, and you learn that. You learn that by doing it, and by living it. I mean, by living into that environment, it's easy to do it.
Would you ever open your own winery or not?
Oh God! So.
And if you were, here's the second part of that. Would you do it here, or would you do it in Italy, or would you do it somewhere else? I see what you're saying about the perspective of it being a recipe to some extent in Italy and in Europe. However, I have spoken to a few winemakers who are in those generational families. And the most recent was a podcast that I did with Emily Aubert in Bordeaux. And she was talking about how unbelievably helpful it is to have an appellation system in Bordeaux, and how that allows her to sustain her businesses. That she could not run multiple wineries or even make the quality of wine that she had if she didn't have the rules. I'd never really thought of it that way. I am a big advocate of the appellation system because as a consumer, I think it is fantastic, as opposed to California or Australia, where we really have literally zero idea what we're going to get, and there's no guardrails at all. And that I think it's a far more risky to buy wine from the U.S. than it is from Europe in terms of flavor.
Oh, it's a gamble. I mean, I call buying wine, it's like Russian roulette. You never know what you're going to get out. So I love the appellation. I mean, I'm not against appellation because it just would go against my culture. But what I see the appellation in Europe that keeps business sustainable, because the people on Chianti or in Sant'Emiliano, they all work first for the region, and then when the region has created that wave, and then the wineries go together with the wave. And then if Centimillon is famous, every winery from that Centimillon will have a high chance to make it in the market. The appellation in California, unless they turn it into be a little bit more structured, it's so much gray areas in California because that 15% cross appellation or 5% cross there.
What about 25% grape variety? I mean,
so it allows big guys to eat small sharks. And one of the issues that we have here where we are in the Amador County, the Sierra Foothills, is that growers will sell the grapes outside of the region because it's no regulation. So I wish it was a stronger regulation in California and that protects maybe a little bit more the cross graping, the cross region, which it's against of anything. But as a winer, actually, we tried so many years and it just falls in a deaf ear and you cannot create that many enemies.
We are going to take a step away from the podcast to thank our sponsors this week, which help keep the podcast going, in addition to our patrons on Patreon. Last Bottle Wines, the one that you guys love to hate. You're going to go to lastbottlewines.com/normal, and you are going to join this fantastic site. You get 1 email a day. It's not 100 million emails a day. I've signed up for those before. Don't make that mistake. These guys taste fantastic wines. They know what they're doing. It's a really fun way to discover stuff we talk about on the podcast. It is the best wines, lowest prices you're ever going to see, 30 to 70% off retail. These are not imaginary discounts. These are not fake brands. They are real brands. You will recognize them. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to lastbottlewines.com/normal. You're going to join and get a $10 instant credit towards your first offer. If you've already done that, you're going to refer a friend. You get $30 and they get 10. Why not do it? Go to lastbottlewines.com/normal. Support Last Bottle. They are fantastic. Love them. And this week, let me tell you something. I got my eye on a couple things. I have a tip that there's going to be some Bordeaux Blanc coming up, some South African Cabernet Sauvignon, and even some Barolo and some fantastic Rosé. I know I will be spending some bucks this week. I think you should too. If you're listening to this later on, there's always great stuff on lastbottlewines.com/normal. Let's also get to our second sponsor this week. That is The Citizenry. CITIZENRY. And you're going to go to citizenrypodcast.com to get an offer from this socially conscious home decor brand. They bring time-tested craftsmanship to your home. They travel around the globe. They partner with master artisans to create designs that have a story, that have a purpose. They create exclusive collections sold directly to you, no middleman markup. I just received this fantastic, iconic lumbar pillow, which helps put the Citizenry on the map, and I can tell you why. It is hand-dyed, no chemicals, native plant extracts. It looks fantastic on my very neutral couch. It's big. It's really supportive if you have back problems. This is a fantastic way to watch TV. And you can feel good about using it because the Citizenry donates 10% of proceeds directly back into artisan communities around the globe to help these entrepreneurs take their business to new heights. You get $50 off your first purchase of $200 or more if you go to citizenrypodcast.com and you're going to enter the code WINE, CITIZENRY podcast.com, and enter WINE. Now let's get back to Lorenzo and this fantastic podcast on Amador Wine. The other issue is that in the United States, who regulates wine? It's the Tax and Trade Board. It's not anybody that has any deep agricultural knowledge. We're playing in the wrong sector. We look at it in the United States, we look at wine as a cash cow, and all the fights that we have to do with taxes and have to do with money. They don't actually have to do with agriculture. Or very rarely. And so actually, even in the end, when we're fighting, people are trying to expand the borders of appellations. They're doing it for money so they can put their name on certain appellations. But so you didn't answer my question. Would you ever open your own winery?
I was hoping you'd not go back.
I'm going back. I'm doing it. I'm not going to leave you. You've been listening to my podcast long enough. I'm not going to let you go.
I know that. So would I open my winery? Yes, when I came to California, that was the dream, was to have my own winery. But I made that dream true this year because this year I'm part owner, so I'm like part owner of the Andis Wines. So I consider now this is my winery and this is my project for the future. Would I open a winery in Italy? Maybe. for my retirement, I'll go back there and
I'll work for you, by the way. I want to retire in Montalcino, so if you can offer me a job, I'm there.
That's where my heart it is. Like every year we go, every year not, but every other year, like we try to go back to Italy. That's how we stay, like in little towns around Montalcino and Montepulciano.
Pienza. Yeah, it's so pretty. So you're in Sonoma, and it's like all schools. Everybody's getting their jobs, and they're finishing up, and they're like, oh, I'm working in Napa, and I want to work in Sonoma, or I want to work in Santa Barbara. Why did you go to Amador?
As a European, I always thought that wine was made in Napa, like most of the European thing.
Well, excuse me, everybody, like most people in the United States, American wine is Napa, sometimes Sonoma, but that's it, right?
Exactly, yeah. And for me, and this is back again to me being different. It was not written anywhere on my biography, but I worked as well for Fendi for a short period. Fendi, which is part of a Louis Vuitton company.
Like the bags?
Yeah. So.
Oh, luxury goods.
Yes, I saw the luxury part of the business. I mean, the pinnacle of the luxury part.
Oh yeah.
But in Florence, no one talked about the guy in Montalcino, since we're talking that it's crafting leather for generations and making a bag. And I like more that style. I like more the one that did not have a giant label or acronyms all across what you wear. So I thought that Napa was for me like a Louis Vuitton bag that where you have it. I mean, you're just showing that, oh, I have money or I have a lot of debt to buy a Louis Vuitton bag. So that's how there are two kind of people: the people that buy it because they like it and people that buy it just to show up. So for me, I wanted something different. And Amador, I mean, I got lucky. I mean, to be honest, I have no clue where Amador was. I mean, so I'm trying to be politically correct here and sounded like a big romance. But I was in Sacramento, which Sacramento is the capital of California. It's inland. That's where I live now. I was having a bottle of Cabernet Franc, was a 2012 vintage. And I was amazed. I'm a huge fan of Cabernet Franc. It's my favorite varietal of all the time. I took my wife and I said, hey, let's just go and check out this winery. I mean, it's so beautiful and they make a phenomenal wine. So I took the car and drove from Sacramento, which is about 45 minutes, into the foothills. And this beautiful valley just, boom, came across my face. And it reminded me like Tuscan hills or the Piedmont hills. Without the churches on top of the hill, like
no old castles, but that's
no old castles there. It's because there's no rivalry on families here, so
right.
And I said like, oh, I had like like full of air that was in my lungs and make me feel comfortable. I said, this is where I want to be.
Very few people get to have that kind of experience, right? Okay. All right. Well, hang on. If you can hear me, I'm going to hang up and we will try again. Hold on. All right. So we had a tiny little technical glitch. If it sounds slightly different, that's why. But we are back recording here. So we were talking about you making it to the Sierra Foothills and you coming and saying, gosh, the valley of my dreams.
Yeah. Should be a movie. Yes. I mean, for me, Sierra Foothills it definitely got my attention and got me in here now. I mean, I love this valley. I love the opportunity that this valley. I did not discover nothing new. I mean, Amador County and the Sierra Foothills has been growing grapes since the 1800s. I mean, since the gold rush. And a lot of people that moved here, they either were from Italy or from Europe. Not a lot of them made it through gold, and they went back exactly what they did best, and was growing grapes and being a farmer. So that's how kind of. I love the fact that this region is a little bit still, which I would call it a virgin region, because it's not that much populated by gigantic winery, even that slightly is changing with the move of a few big sharks here in the valley, which is changing a little bit the needle. But,
It's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, what it does is bring more people there. It brings awareness of people. On the other hand, it can be a real nightmare for smaller people who are looking at how things have been. However, there is one thing that we definitely need to discuss. You and I have talked about this before offline, which is that the Sierra Foothills is enormous. Even Amador and El Dorado, which are really the best appellations within it, are really erratic. And I think we need to address why the quality out of Amador is so erratic and what are the characteristics that make it a standout region? Why do you love it?
So, I mean, oh my God, you're 100% correct on that as well. When it comes to Amador and El Dorado, it's if you need to know about other wineries, you have to do triple research on what you're drinking from Amador County before you open that cork, because you never know when it's going to come out. And 8 times out of 10, yeah, it's doubtful. So,
it's really bad. It's true.
But what I love about the foothills is the diversity on soils, diversity on microclimate, and grapes. There are over 120 grapes that grows in this region, which it's pretty unique. And the high elevation, we are right below the snow line. I mean, like above us, only forest grows, like pines and nothing else. So we are quite up on an elevation, which it makes the grapes struggle a little bit more. And as we all know, a grape that has a little bit of struggle on their production create very concentrated and great wines.
Well, there's really cool nights too, right?
Very cool nights. It's incredibly fascinating how the temperatures swing from triple digits at noon to 45, 50 at 2 a.m. in the morning or 3 a.m. in the morning, what makes this region very fascinating for high acid varietals like Barbera and Rhone grapes as well right now that are shining over here. And as you go up as well, we found out that some of the Bordelais grapes are producing a different style of wine that is from Napa, and people are happy to try something different. You know, when you open an Amador County wine or a Sierra Foothills bottle of wine, you can actually taste that sense of place if the wine is made respecting the varietal, and because it's a lot of manipulation. I mean, it's a lot of Napa wannabe or Lodi wannabe, because these growers here, now that they're realizing like, oh, other regions are doing gigantic steps and why we can't do it, and like they all go and get a bottle of wine and check it, and it's like, oh, I want to make the same thing. But we all know, I mean, you know better than me, Elizabeth, that wine, if you don't respect the grapes, and the grapes will talk back to you.
Oh, they do. Yes, they do. Yeah. And you can make enormous styles. But one of the things that Andis is known for and that I like about your wines is that they do have restraint and acidity. I'm wondering if some of that isn't some of Lorenzo bringing Tuscany to Amador.
It's all about where you plug in the grapes and where you plug in the vines, so that brings that natural acidity of the varietal. Every varietal, it's an ensemble of different fermentation and different lots and different soils that you can achieve acidity in the vineyard, and not just by going the simplest way, creating a liquid and just putting it into the wine. We don't do that. I mean, we work extremely with the vineyards. We work with great growers, and our viticulturist, it's phenomenal. I mean, she does a great job there on the field. And if we don't believe on the grape, and that's one of the amazing thing about working at Andis and working with Andis, is just, if we don't believe on that year or on that vintage, or if the wine is not showing at our expectation, we don't feel obligated to do it. Let's thank you as well to the founders of the company, Andy and Janice Friedlander, that they created a business where, first of all, had to carry their name, because Andis is a combination of Andrew and Janice. And if they put their name into that, they wanted to be proud of it, because they did not get into this business because they wanted to make more money. Or Andy Friedlander loves Zinfandels, and he wanted to make Zinfandel that he's proud of. And Janice as well, she's a great businesswoman. I mean, she financial advisor for Morgan Stanley. So,
So she's held 2 jobs, and they've gone back and forth from Hawaii, right?
Yeah, they spare their time between Hawaii and California. And
not a bad life.
Oh, no. It's funny because this year I told her, like, you're leaving Morgan Stanley from highly paid, and you're coming to work for free at Andis. So, Andy, it's the guy that he is always looking for the next thing. He's looking, what should we make next? 3 years ago, we made orange wine. I mean, and that tells a lot about who we are here. I mean,
how'd it go?
Actually, it's pretty phenomenal. I got an email 2 weeks ago from Florida that this guy bought pretty much whole of the production. He said, like, I love your orange wine. Can I get it all? I said, sure. Because it's hard to commercialize different things in a region where still the majority of the people come here for one thing, to buy Zinfandel. And
right.
I spend it more time telling people is no oranges into the wine than it's so that's unfortunately it's going to take a little bit of time for this region. I always tell people that this is Sonoma, but like 10, 15 years ago.
Longer, I think, than that. No. 10, 15 years ago. I mean, you're talking about 30 years ago, 25
Probably,
years
ago.
Probably,
right. Yeah, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Amador first got on the scene because of old vine Zinfandel.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, Amador.
Because it had been planted by those gold rushers.
Gold rushers. And we have one vineyard that was planted in 1869. So it's 150 years
And that's the oldest one in California, right?
Yeah, the oldest documented Zinfandel of California. Yeah, that's the original Grand Pere vineyard, which I believe 2 years ago became Vineyard of the Year in California. So it's a beautiful, beautiful lot. It's like a sleeping giant that wakes up for 3 months and craft this amazing wine. Yeah, I mean, Amador would not be nothing without the Zinfandel, but as we know, the Zinfandel, it's the shine and as well the, I don't know the word in English, but it brought up and down this valley because now people associated Zinfandel as the white Zinfandel, which majority was coming from this area, and it's a myth to tell people that this wine is not sweet or this wine is dry, has no residual sugars, because they have so bad memories about Foothills wine and especially about Amador wines.
I associate the Central Valley with all of that plonk, all of that white zin. I always look at Sierra Foothills as this weird thing about something that was there, but nobody really knew about it. And it was a little bit kitschy. And then some people started to make some old vine zin out of there. And now there's all sorts of stuff going on. Basically, the more exciting producers are using varietals that are Portuguese, and they're looking at Italian varietals and things that can withstand heat. I guess if more producers had high quality, and I don't mean to be disrespectful in saying that, but if it were that, I think it could be, and maybe in the future will be, a really interesting region, because one of the issues that I have with a place like Napa or Willamette Valley, for instance, is because it's so samey. You have the same grape over and over and over again. And it's not even. It's not even in Chianti, where you could go and have 5 different Chiantis and they taste nothing alike. You could have 5 Chiantis from the same producer and they would taste nothing alike. Most don't make that many, but they don't taste alike because of the variation in the land and elevation and all that kind of stuff. Sierra Foothills could sort of be like Sonoma in the sense that you don't know what's coming next. I mean, you could go to a place that only makes Portuguese or only makes Italian. And
so far the Italian varietals like Vera and Primitivo have been shining here, or Zinfandel, which is also known as Primitivo, but as well like Rhone grapes right now, like Syrah, Petit Syrah, and Grenache are the next big thing of this. And great producers from nationwide are looking into this region and making phenomenal Grenache. Actually, a lot of Napa producers buy a lot of Grenache from this region.
When you say this region, are you talking about Amador and El Dorado, or are you talking about the whole of Sierra Foothills? Because I think there's a fine point to put on that.
So this is what I don't like about what's happening with this region, because when you put Amador County on the appellation, people associate you automatically with Zinfandel, but when you put Sierra Foothills, it like kind of stimulate an imagination and brings you up to like, it's not just Amador County, they are not just Zinfandel producer. And we went through that this year where we had to change appellation because it was hard to sell the other varietals.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I live it on my shoulders. I travel about 150 days a year and meet people from Hawaii to Virginia and Wisconsin to Texas. And we had to upgrade to go to a bigger region, which is Sierra Foothills, because all the other producers in Napa or Sonoma or Central Valley or Paso that buy grapes from this region, they do not use Amador. They just use Sierra Foothills. So kind of like they have built a different reputation for the Sierra Foothills as a more diverse region than just Amador County or El Dorado Hills.
I hate that they're pushing you guys into something that's a less specific appellation, because this goes back to what we were talking about before. If you look at Sierra Foothills, what is it, 5 million acres? Yeah, it's something like that.
It's huge. It starts way north when we are, and it finished like 5-hour drive from here south.
Most of that is not planted acreage, but still, if you think about the terroir that is going to encompass, that's absurd. It is a fine point to make that we do want to be encouraging producers with our interest and with our visit. We want you to put Amador on the label. I know you can't because of what is going on in other parts of California, but that's kind of sucky for us.
I know. That's why we on the back of our labels now, we put all the information about the vineyard and the soil and all the story about the Amador County, because yes, we don't want to separate 100% from Amador County because this is where we are and this is our roots are. But being a region that is far remotely from the major cities like San Francisco and Sacramento, and, you know, people look to you that, oh, it's the Sierra Foothills. And there are still people even in Sacramento, which is 45 minutes away. They don't know where Amador County it is or where other Fairplay or other small AVAs. But they all associated, oh, it's right below Lake Tahoe, which is a big destination for travelers. And then it's the Sierra Foothills. So everyone associated, oh, it's on the Sierra Foothills. But when you say Sierra Foothills, they kind of like have an idea now where you are. And then that's the key of grabbing people's attention and making them feel comfortable that they know where the winery. They might not have quite a clue where exactly it is, but that they know approximately that is in the Sierras. And we noticed that as well, like traveling on the major cities of United States, like from LA to Chicago to Atlanta and all over East Coast, the majority of the customers, they don't know exactly where it is. So we found a necessity to go back to a bigger region that even that, it's backward because instead of like upgrading your AVA, we're downgrading. We're going to
get Sierra Foothills to be recognized. I think what's funny is that people don't know that it's the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. They don't think about that. I'm not sure that they know, that's where Yosemite is and Tahoe and all of that kind of stuff. I wonder if that would help to just explain that. I think the key is to make people think about elevation, because you're inland, and so elevation is really what you have going for you. And I don't know that everybody knows that. I think I'm going to have to do a podcast just on the overview of Sierra Foothills, so you can provide some background for that. All right. So Lorenzo is so modest that I just had to ask him offline. He had dropped that he is a part owner of Andis. This is a new thing. What's going on?
Well, I thought you did not pay attention when I said it, and I was glad.
I did pay attention, and then I was like, excuse me, you went from national sales manager when I met you in November, and now here we are. What's going on?
The owner and the founders of the company, they are the most amazing people that I ever met in my life. I mean, they're like my second parents, to be honest. And they are great entrepreneurs and great business people, and they found someone that can help them.
And that would be you.
Yeah, offered me the opportunity to become a partner with them and join them on this beautiful journey that they're trying to build a legacy on the Sierra Foothills. So this year, me and our CEO, Janae Place, we were offered to become partners of the winery.
Okay, so friends, let me just be clear. If you love Lorenzo, you need to really come out and support Andis, because this is going to be his baby on the long term. That's what we're getting at here. This is about family winery and a dream come true, and it's pretty awesome. So when are you going to start you're going to start making the wines?
Well, I mean,
you already helped with the blending and stuff like that, and all the process.
Yes, I don't think we have a team that I cannot compete with them. So when we work with Malta, it's just a rock star and legacy winemaker from Napa, Bordeaux, I have my two layers and my two thoughts or input that I put it in there because as I call myself, I am like a data collector, and because I travel so much, I sit down and share what the customer wants. Because the key of making a successful winery, you have to listen to the people that actually pays the dollar, and there are the consumers. And I do pay a lot of attention, and I found out what they want, but without moving away from our style. I just want to make food-friendly wines, and that has always been my goal, and that's how I achieve it, by sitting down on the blendings and sharing my palette with Mayan and Philippe and Mark, which are our leading winemakers. I do not call myself the winemaker, and I do not want to be. That's such a big responsibility. And as a European, we don't believe in winemaker as a title, because it's a combination of agriculture and enology, and there are two different aspects of the winemaking industry. So I see myself as the input, as a connection, as the bridge between the grape and the bottle. So I have my ideas and my concept on what fruit we should work. And actually this year I handled almost 90% of the grapes and the contracts and what grapes and what varietals we are planting and grafting and which new growers we are contacting and getting the best fruit of the foothills. And then once we have the inputs, I handle it on the hands of our phenomenal winemaking team, and then they do a phenomenal job. And then I'll see them again back when the wine is finished, when the wine is wine in the barrel. And we sit down all together and we go through each barrel, which it's quite a long day that day.
So let me ask you this. Do you have pretty strong views about environmental sustainability? Do you only work with growers who have that mentality?
Our winery is built with a green design. It's built with the first mission to respect the Mother Nature and bring the outdoor indoor. We have like this 360 view. So we only work with growers that practice mostly dry farming or closer to dry farming.
Wow.
Old vines. So our Zinfandels, they are all old vines. They are like at least 45 years and plus, then go all the way to 150-year-old. And we recycle our own water. We clean our tanks with steam and not with water, because we spend almost 600% less water than a tank. Cleaning in a barrel, you're spending way more water than actually the gallons that goes into the barrel. So, and we don't do an organic 100%, but we're sustainable farming.
Yep.
We practice organic farming, but we're not sealed. That's another thing that's
very expensive to do.
Oh yeah, it's a cost that your listeners and our customers will be paying it, because we have to roll it into that. And with distribution system, like $1 more at the winery end up costing $3-4 more to the customer for just having a green seal on the back. In order to maintain these pricings that we have, which we are targeting an average of $20 a bottle, 20 to 25 maximum,
which is so affordable.
But the way to achieve that is protecting ourselves from the Napa wave that they are coming to buy grape from here. And then the growers, I don't blame them. I mean, they live on that land and they have to get the best price of it. So, and then we're competing with Napa pricing. So $20 in Napa, you cannot even get an empty bottle. And
I think there's some water that's $20 there.
Yeah. Well, I bet that someone bought something there.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
For us, our direction is going towards the state. So every year when we look a good vineyard that the family is either stepping away or they let us farm it, or so we kind of offer them a fair deal. Because another thing that we don't want to take advantage of anything. I mean, wine, that's at the end, it's a luxurious product for the common people. So it's a product that, yes, it's taxed as a luxury, but it's consumed, 99% of that it's consumed between families, between friends. I mean, we want to keep it that level, and hopefully one day, we'll achieve it, and we'll help everyone that's helped us in this journey, because it's not easy. And
you've grown the brand to 30 states distribution, which is huge. So obviously you're doing something right. Do you think it's the price point? Is it the quality? Is it that people are more receptive? Are they understanding? Or is it that you do a lot of vineyard designates, you have a lot of wines that are a bit different from what Amador offers? Or do people just want your Zin and that's it? What's the situation?
I categorize it in two ways. So the West Coast, that they have been a little bit more in contact by history with European wine. And then they are more open to try European varietals, like for example, California wants more Barbera. So it's funny, we sell more Barbera in California than Zinfandel. But as you cross the Sierra Nevadas and you get into the Rockies and the Colorado, and then in the Midwest, and then people still have that idea that they want Zinfandel, and they associate this region with Zinfandel. So yeah, we sell more Zinfandel. Red blends as well. It's a big SKU on the market. Our red blend is the most sold wine, but the Zinfandel still is the one that labels us and carries us around. This year we did 3 different single vineyards. Doing a single vineyard is like showing Zinfandel can be a beautiful and why not even a luxurious product? I mean, why Burgundy can have 100 million single vineyards? And we have vineyards that go back to 150 years, and from sandy soil to decomposed granite and volcanic soil, and we want to enhance that.
Problem is that Sutter Home just wound up ruining it with white Zinfandel, but it doesn't make it any less complex. It just means that I think we're going to have to wait for a new generation who forgot about white Zinfandel, because it can be quite elegant. I mean, it can be very multifaceted. It's just that people tell other people, oh, did you know it used to be this really disgusting, blah, blah, blah. But hopefully the mindset will change. When you were talking about the distribution and what people want from you, and this is just a thought that I'm having, is that here on the East Coast, we have so much access to the Italian varietals and to the French varietals that when we see something from California, we think we can't get Zinfandel really from Italy, but we can get Barbera from Italy. So that may be part of the thing, is that we've got an eye towards some place that's equally close to us. You know, Europe is not that far from the East Coast. It's very far from California, but...
Yeah, it cost me more money to send the wine in Virginia and in North Carolina than it cost the Piedmont or the Chianti to come to your door. So that's been a huge issue with us competing on pricing, because, you know, a Barbera that says California on the back, and then and the Barbera that says Italy on the back, and my Barbera probably is $1 more sometimes than them. It's just been a huge problem. And that's what they have Lorenzo. So Andis have Lorenzo. So I try a lot.
As long as you are staying true to your terroir, and you're staying true to your style, and you're staying true to the Lorenzo idea of food-friendly wines, you know, and you're not making these over-extracted bombs of yuck. Yeah. And people do.
Oh, yeah, it's easy. It's the easiest thing to do.
Lorenzo, how do people find your wines?
The easiest way, I would say, thanks to the internet, in our website, and we do ship wines nationwide and everywhere. We are in 30 states, and if you go to where you buy your wines, just ask about, do you guys carry Andis? If they don't, let me know. I'll send the wine there. You know, it's like a demand, like by a lot of people asking where to get Andis. Do you have Andis? And then people start creating and maybe building that interest.
Okay, so everybody, it's ANDIS wines.com. Okay, that's how you get it direct. ANDIS. And Lorenzo, I adore you. I could talk to you forever. In fact, at some point, I'm just going to come to the winery, and you are just going to, we'll just sit down with our families, and we'll just never stop talking. I mean, that's just how it's going to go.
I would love to have you here, Elizabeth.
All right. Everybody, please support Lorenzo in his new ownership of Andis. This is so exciting. AndisWines.com. And with that, this has been another episode of Wine for Normal People. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.